All right, welcome back. Yes, those two gentlemen join us here in the studios to weigh in on security ahead of the elections. Onyekachi Adekoya, security consultant, CEO, PR24 Risk Management Consulting, and sitting right beside him is Hamzat Lawal, Chief Executive Officer, Connected Development Co. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chamberlain.
I know you've been doing, both of you, doing some looking into the security scenario in the country. INEC says prevailing concerns. Let me start with you, Mr. Lawal. How concerned should we be at all?
We should be very concerned as we go into the polls. For us at Connected Development, we have already started observing the elections because election for us is not on election day. There are pre-election assessment and observation that usually we deploy, and then election day and post-election observation. And from our data, which we deployed observers since June 2022, close to 30 attacks on INEC facility across the country, but more prevalent in the southeast of the country. So we should be worried because without adequate security, elections cannot hold. And I think sometimes we forget about the trends with two previous elections. When you look at 2015 and 2019, elections were postponed because in 2015, it was hampered on insecurity. In 2019, it was logistics. So as we go into 2023, and we've seen a spike in insecurity, but particularly our data is showing that now politicians have armed thugs. So now what's prevalent is the ammunition of thugs and giving them substance so that they can undertake some of this attack to their political opponent or even at government facilities like INEC. And this should be worrisome to electorate, but most particularly to security agencies, because this is testing, how they can overcome this and respond adequately in good time.
Mr. Adekoya, what have you found?
I think same with what Hamza said. The issues are just the same. Our election cycle typically experiences violence like this. And based on data, we are now approaching the peak of the period, which is now between this period in February to second week in March. If you look at all the issues of insecurity we've been having, with all the states we are in currently, we have not reached the peak of insecurity because as we get closer to the elections and on election day itself, you will see the rise. Based on data itself, we've had over 3,422 incidents of violence, political-related violence. The data from ACLED is there. From my own perspective, we had analyzed and said that cyclically, man is a creature of habit. So history will repeat itself. Despite all the right speaking from the government security forces, we have not seen the height of the insecurity yet, sadly.
Okay, let me ask you about what we saw yesterday, in some states over this protest for over Naira scarcity. I'm wondering what you made of it as a security expert. Do you think that was something that was spontaneous? Was it planned? How did it come across to you? Was it really a kettle waiting to boil over?
I think that something holds Nigeria together, some invisible force, because other climes would not go through what we are going through and still be a bit temperate as we are. Cast your minds back even till this morning. There are people, there are queues at the banking halls. The network is overloaded. The financial system is stressed currently. Now we then have a lot of failed transactions and people have their money stuck and the banks cannot open. So the pressure for the masses is two-pronged. You have a lot of failed transactions. People who have, 50,000 in their account and you have 3 failed 10,000 transactions, for example. The banks are facing the brunt from the central bank, from the state governors, from the customers themselves. The bank can't open. The people don't care about this whole thing with the central bank, the politicians, the governors. They just want access to their cash. People are denied access to cash for over 3 weeks, going on 1 month now. It's difficult for people. So, yeah, we've seen Edo, we've seen Oyo, we've seen Delta, we've seen skirmishes in Lagos, we've seen skirmishes in Ogun, in other parts of the country, and Kwara. And it's dangerous, really, because it's not like the economy was faring any better. You then layer on that suffering insecurity. You then layer on that suffering lack of access to cash. I mean, this is national TV. People just have to be a bit more sensitive. Okay, you don't have the 1,000, you don't have the 500 naira notes. No problem. Where are the 100 naira notes?
We're about to have the 200, probably.
I'm just asking, if I had in my wallet now 100 naira, 20 pieces, I'll be fine. I'll feel comfortable. You can pay for some things. We have, for example, operatives across the country. It's difficult to get to work. So there's a lot of pressure. And maybe the statement by the president this morning has bought the federal government some time, by my assessment. But by Monday, when people go to the banks and they can't see the 200 naira notes, they just know that there's still more problems. So there is something there that the government has to take very, 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 very seriously. That said, I understand that there are the issues there, but people don't care. They just want access to their cash. So it's a dangerous situation from my assessment.
But Hamza, what kind of indicators did you see? Because many would have thought probably we don't know what kind of impact that statement will have. And then the enthusiasm that people had for this election and probably still have as a result of introduction of technology, has it dampened the psychological makeup, all of what's happening now?
No, the enthusiasm is still there. People are still excited and they want to go cast their ballot. But our fears and the worries and concern we're getting is that a lot of people are scared because there's no certainty in this policy and they don't know what way it will sway. Right now, it's as if the Apex Court is holding us to ransom and we don't know where they would tilt to. But the feelers we're also getting on the field is people don't have or cannot access money. And before now, we've done a lot of campaign on vote buying. Even the last time we spoke was around money politics. But you see now, a lot of people are now saying, you know what, I think I would have to transact my vote on election day. Because 5,000 naira now will go a long way to anyone. So just imagine the impact and implication that this has on our elections.
Are they more prone?
Oh yes,
more
they're vulnerable
susceptible
now.
to vote buying?
Yes, now they're vulnerable. People are vulnerable. 5,000 naira will go a long way. In short, 1,000 naira would actually go a long way. So the feelers we're getting on the field is from even people who had said, they would not sell their vote. Now they're saying, you know what, we're going to go out and look for people who will offer us anything.
Can we be certain that politicians have this money to buy votes on the day? If everybody is cash-strapped, do we assume that they may or may not be cash-strapped? How do we approach that kind of scenario?
Well, we've seen reports that politicians are mopping up the new Naira notes.
Dear.
We've had reports even from the Apex Bank, that politicians are mopping up this money. So again, I think that we need to do much more on our intelligence gathering, but most importantly, how do we respond when we get some of this intelligence on the ground and on the field? So even INEC have complained that they need cash for these elections. Because come to think of it, there are drivers working under the National Union of Road Transport Workers. They don't have account number. How do you mobilize those people? You say you want to do transfer. To which account? How? So we are a cash economy, and let's not shy away from it. Yes, we all agree this policy is great, but you need to set timelines. And then you need to also ensure that at least we have enough cash backing to cushion this effect.
Yeah, but Mr. Adeko, does it vary from zone to zone, this kind of concerns? Or is it a general fear about how to approach elections? Because there are some who think that some areas may have some sort of cash or something, and others may not be as apprehensive as some others may be. Who knows?
No, this cuts across, and I think that in a policy environment, what is happening is that the federal government is trying to do too much at the same time. This election has its own dynamics. It's the first time in a long time that technology will be center stage. It's been coming, so we're there now with the beavers. It's the first time in a long time you're seeing massive youth involvement. So that in itself has changed the dynamics in terms of the expectation of the voters. It's the first time in a long time we're having 3 major candidates on the ballot. Before it was a 2-horse race. Now you have the third force, which has been coming with a clear path to victory. So the dynamics have also changed. We've seen the first time in a long time also, a fairly or quasi-independent INEC. Okay, so the INEC is being given the leeway to do what it has to do. Now, the fact the president wants to, at the same time, maybe have like a free, fair election, but he's doing so much at the same time. So when you layer all the firsts and the changes that we have, you then put the cash problem. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's in the north. I'm off to Maiduguri very soon.
Okay.
It's in the northwest. It's in the north central. It's in the southeast. Then you have the insurgency and the insecurity that we have. So people are caught in between so many dynamics at this time. What I would have thought the federal government would have done was to dial back a bit, allow the new initiatives from INEC to be center stage, and, we deal with the issue of insecurity. The cash dynamics is quite dangerous. I don't know what the data is saying. I don't think people are particularly keen now on even voting because people are frustrated.
Wow. All right, let's get to our colleagues in Lagos. I know they have talked about how they have got their PVC on the day, so they might still be very enthusiastic about all of this. Guys?
It's only that we need cash. But, we'll talk about that later. And talking about cash, let me come to you, Mr. Lawal. Just 2 days ago, after a meeting with the CBN previously, the INEC chairman came out at that consultative meeting with political parties that even though the CBN had said that they were going to get cash 10 days to the elections, there isn't, they don't have cash, according to INEC. How significant do you see that being in the build-up to the election, in the logistics, in the planning, in everything that INEC has to ensure that this election holds creditably?
Well, cash would significantly impact this election or access to cash by INEC. And we hope that the CBN is able to pull through and provide this cash to INEC. But come to think of it again, it's just not only INEC that would need cash. What about security agencies? Even the security agents that have been deployed across Nigeria. I know for a fact that the men, the boots on the ground in the northeast, they give them their daily allowance in cash. And now they're cash trap. God forbid we have military disobedience, in this part of the country, people who have put their lives on the line just to protect you and I. So money and cash particularly will play a significant role as we go into this election. And I hope that as INEC is reviewing, their electoral management deployment, I hope this would not be a concern that they would now have to they will not have to maybe postpone the election or shift the election by some days or weeks. And this would impact the election. By the way, this is already impacting the elections as we speak. So, we can't afford to take this much as a country and as we try to transit in a democratic government.
Well, Mr. Lawal, the question is how impactful will it be? Thankfully, you also brought into the mix the angle of the security agencies themselves, saying they also do not have cash. And you rightly pointed out that the security agencies who will get the job done on election day, their business is done in cash. So does that in any way make this process vulnerable in any way, manner, shape, or form?
The process is already vulnerable. Today, INEC is cash trap. Security agencies are cash trap. Electoral stakeholders are cash trap. So the impact is there. And what this might likely become is a postponement of the elections. God forbid, and we hope this does not happen. And we've never seen a time where Nigerians have that level of trust to INEC. The perception around INEC right now is great because of the deployment of technology, but most importantly, how INEC is able to engage and how responsive they are. And we've seen them, taking cue from Ekiti and Osun election. There's that trust. But right now, we're losing grip of citizens' trust and support to the electoral process.
Even when some bankers also say they do not have that cash. But let me ask Mr. Adekoya this next question. You spoke to the impact of these pockets of protests in various parts of the South. And you've also said that this is really going to have its own effect. You've drawn parallels between our elections, the electioneering process, and the protests and everything that is happening. What do we need to do to arrest it? Because most of the time, these things begin, even after cash has been released into the fray, it takes a little while for tension to douse. We're 10 days or thereabout, less than 10 days to the elections. What do you see happening in the very shortest possible time that can give people enough trust and confidence to come out and vote without fear of any insecurity unleashed on them?
Well, I think that the parties to this whole brouhaha have pitched their position, and it's quite solid. You have the Supreme Court's position, still made a pronouncement yesterday. You've had the president's pronouncement this morning, though the Supreme Court said maintain status quo. The CBN has been making statements, the bank are making statements, politicians are making statements. We are 9 days to the election. And even if we had all that we needed, we still would not have a completely flawless election. For example, we've increased the number of polling units to about 176,000. We've increased the total eligible voters I think we're about 12 million something to 93 million now. So there's a lot of firsts going into it, but we're not looking at logistics. Logistics, for example, INEC would have about 1.6 million or 1.5 million ad hoc staff. They have to be paid cash. The president has said increase the supply of 200 naira. The cost of moving the 200 naira to the banks is going to be very expensive. Imagine moving a bullion van with 200 naira notes. You could move more with 1,000 or 500. So already there's a logistic challenge. INEC offices are being attacked. More may still be attacked. So there's the best outcome we can see will be a managed outcome. We should all manage our expectations, and hope for the best. But there's not much that can happen within the next 9 days to the general election. You can't flood the system with cash in 9 days. You can't even satisfy your customers. INEC in this instance, law enforcement. I mean, for law enforcement, for example, for 176,000 polling units, you need minimum 2 policemen unarmed in each of the polling units. We don't have today 300,000 policemen. What you need would be 352,000 by 176,000 polling units. You then need to man the borders. The borders will be shut down. You then need to have quick response teams at tactical positions at different parts of the country to ensure that there's quick response. We still don't even have all the numbers that we need. So I think the president may have to issue another statement to pacify Nigerians a bit and call for some more cooperation, because from what we are looking at, it does not look as though we have all that we need to have a flawless situation. It will be at best a managed outcome with pockets of issues here and there, but as we do in terms of statistical non-compliance or insignificance, the 1 or 2 pockets of areas may not necessarily mar the entire process. So I think that's a prognosis of what we're looking at in the near term.
Just one quick one from the country threat map, that has been drawn up. And I'm wondering how you situate that in the scheme of things. You said elections will occur amidst a high level of insecurity and the necessary conditions for unrest abound. One of it, of course, is this Naira thing. Now, in the light of the fact that a significant number of the unrest, protests we've heard about this Naira scarcity has been more from the south. And of course, thankfully, you said you're going to Maiduguri this morning. I'm wondering where you situate what could happen in the north and how to ensure things don't get bad already, because from the threat analysis, the country threat map that you have, it's worse both in the northwest and in the northeast.
To do certain things, to move some cash to the north to manage, because the penetration of banking is not very high in the north. So the CBN has taken some steps to ameliorate some of those concerns. The threat map is there. We've said already the elections will occur amidst high level of insecurity. So That's there. The bigger problem is the protest culture. Since NSAS, we've seen the protest appetite become very high. And due to law enforcement response, response was low, ab initio. The police has put out their new procurements to say they are ready. We have 774 local governments. The police are constrained. They can't effectively cover everywhere. So, you know, the threat map is there. The concerns, again, are there. I mean, come back to what I'm saying again. Nigerians, we all have to manage our expectation. The federal government, the state government cannot ensure a successful outcome alone. The burden will fall more to the people to be there and ensure that we maybe collaborate, be a bit more patient with ourselves, understand that these issues are transient while we are hoping for the best. Okay, but if we look at the map and the statistics alone, prognosis is not looking very good.
We yet again refer to the country threat map. It will seem like the deployment of the higher numbers of deployment of CBN super agents, you know, to the north compared to the south, may not necessarily address the problem of the possibility of violence. According to that country threat map, we have there parts of the northeast marked in red as having higher risk. We have also the north central marked in red and the north west as well marked in red. So besides the current upheaval, you know, happening in the country right now due to the cash crunch, what are the other preconditions for electoral violence in these parts of the country?
Yeah, you need to look at the drivers of those risk factors in those areas. You have ISWAP, Boko Haram in the northeast. These issues are known. You have bandits and Ansaro, different armed criminal, transnational criminal groups in the north central. We have ISWAP rearing his head now in the north central, in parts of Kogi and Kwara. You have the unrest in the southeast, in the south-south, protest culture in the southwest. Those are the things driving what you see as a risk factors. In the northeast, for example, some of the drivers of those coloration you're seeing is illegal vehicle checkpoints. So we need to separate the normal security issues that we have from the political violence. What would drive political violence would be, if you look at the SBM map for projection, where you have the states that will be keenly contested, what you think would be a fair walkover for states with incumbency, the gray areas where you have a lot of undecided voters. Those areas and the war of attrition, as it were, between political parties in a quest to, you know, reduce the influence of opposition in the areas of strength and play up their own area of advantage. Those will be the major drivers of political violence this season. And like the then INEC chairman, Jega, said, if you see political violence in the country, look to the politicians. So again, the major event on the 25th would be the major driver, you know, regardless of the cash crunch. The typical things will happen, you know, but we're hoping that the strategies of the government security forces would work to abate some of these issues.
Is this bound to have an impact on voter turnout on election day? And, you know, specifically, what percentage of voter turnout do you hope to see when you look at the numbers in voter registration this year? INEC has churned out over 90 million.
Yeah, I mean, just case in point would be like the Southeast. You look at the Anambra election. IPOB issued statement there will be no election, walked that back some days to the election. There's a certain Simon Ekpa that is also making similar statements. The impact on that on the Anambra election in 2021 was you had a 10.1% voter turnout. So, yes, the threat of violence increases the risk of voter apathy. It's there already. INEC already has said it cannot conduct polls in over 240 polling units, 240 out of 176,000. Maybe that's not particularly significant, but those are Nigerians that will be disenfranchised. Okay, there are places you can't move freely into in the Northwest, in the Northeast. There are senators who will struggle to even go home freely and campaign. So clearly, it's a stated issue. It's almost a given. Insecurity will contribute to voter turnout, and generally, we particularly don't have high numbers of voter turnout. So when you layer the cash constraint, the frustration, the economic issues, the fact that there's fuel scarcity, people cannot even travel. Cost of transportation is very high now. A lot of people travel back to their villages or their wards to vote. A lot of people may not be able to do that. So a number of factors, not just the issue of insecurity, the logistical constraints will impact on voter turnout, definitely. To what extent is yet to be seen.
Indeed, it is Hydra-headed. Let me now bring it to you, Mr. Hamzat. You spoke earlier also about, reports that politicians are arming thugs ahead of the polls. If we, tie that to the disposition of the Inspector General of Police, who says that they are doing everything that they can and they're going after those who want to cause any form of unrest during the election. Is this in full cognizance of, some of these reports that abound about, the presence of, elements that want to cause some form of instability in the polls?
Oh, yes, it's from reports, and I'm sure from intelligence from his men. And I'll give a simple scenario. When you attend a political rally, you would see state actors, the police, civil defense, army, providing security. And in one corner, you'll see young men who have taken substance with arm, who are non-state actors, and they're just wearing black in one corner, also providing security to the politician. And most times, those are the men that the security would use to go and attack his opposition or whoever he deems fits that it's a threat to his political career. So this is a typical scenario of what's currently happening on the ground when you follow this campaign of all of these politicians. But again, we've not seen stronger clampdown on people perpetrating these acts. The IG of police, we've not seen arrest. We've not seen interrogation. We've not seen prosecution. And the elections are just 9 days ago. I think we need to send a strong message. And the Nigerian police force, who is the apex law enforcement agency, needs to send a strong message. And also particularly, the trends we're seeing are inciting statements. See, violence does not just erupt. There are build-up to what would trigger violence, and most of which are the statements by the political elites or the political party and their candidates or some of their spokespersons. It is really sad that a lot of them have not really conducted themselves well in public. Just day before yesterday, there was violence that erupted in Kano. Some of this report did not make it to headline news. But people are already being attacked, and some lives are being lost, by these attacks from statements or inciting statements from political parties and their candidates.
Now, Mr. Hamzat, it's a grim canvas, that you're painting. And if we also add the current cash crunch and the unrest being experienced in many parts of the country, do you sense a helplessness across the land in terms of insecurity? And as a result, should we be surprised if 48 hours there is an announcement that the elections have been postponed?
No, we shouldn't be surprised. There's that high-level apathy. People are already frustrated. There's hopelessness. And the sad reality is nobody's even telling us the truth. And I think that the elites have taken Nigeria for granted. The CBN is not telling us the truth. The federal government is not telling us the truth. Even the banks, the commercial banks, they've not come clear to tell us the truth. Some of them are speaking in parables. Come clear and even have respect and dignity for the Nigerian people and tell us what is the true state of things or affairs. And I think Nigerians are not asking for too much, and they will be happy to support their government. I wouldn't be surprised if these elections are postponed. And because, again, from our experience in 2019, I remember at that time we deployed 10,000 observers to the 36 states. I remember few hours to that election, it was postponed. We had to deploy 5,000 people to go and call back 10,000 people. Because, there are places in Nigeria where you don't have mobile network. So we need to send manpower. And you just imagine how much it will cost us to deploy 5,000 people. And I remember also, again, on the morning of that election that was postponed in 2019, our men were attacked on the ground because if you look at our tag as observers, there's INEC. So a lot of electorate thought were INEC, because we were the ones who broke the news to them that there's no elections today. It has been postponed. There was an announcement by INEC, 24 hours before that time. And they could not understand or process that information. And they started attacking us on the field that, we're trying to disenfranchise them. So, this is a very sensitive time. And with all the impacts from insecurity, from the lack of money in the economy, and even the frustration. Today, we're dealing with 30% unemployment rate. So people are already overstretched with inflation and other social vices. And now there's no money, and we're just 9 days to elections.
Well, Mr. Lawal, I would like to ask you and Mr. Adekoya this one question. I'd like you to respond to it in succession. We have INEC as a stakeholder in this election. We have politicians, and you've listed quite a number of them that are going to be a part of the process. More than 1,000 people vying for Senate seats, more than 3,000 people vying for House of Representatives seats, on and on like that. Do you think, both as INEC, as the people who are going to vote, the election observers, the political parties, all of us, the security agencies, all in the mix of this election process, do you think we are ready, both individually and collectively? If you say some are ready, which ones are ready? If you say we are not ready, which ones are not ready? First of all, you, Mr. Lawal.
Interestingly, we had this conversation yesterday after our civil society roundtable. The only people that are not ready are the politicians and their political party. And if you look at the trend, even right from their primaries, and what happened in their primaries that is still affecting and impacting the secondary election, or the general election like we call it. The security agencies are ready, electorates are ready, INEC is ready, but the politicians are not ready. And I think maybe this is where we need to look into as civil society and partners towards progress, to invest really to this electoral process or political process. The politicians, honestly, they are not ready. They're not ready for these general elections. From every indication that we've seen. Every other person or party is ready, but the politicians are not ready.
I see you have this election monitoring platform app. So what is worthy of note here, as you see behind us?
So we're deploying 2 platforms. We've deployed one in June 2022.
Is
and
this
we
the
called
latest
it.
one?
No, this one will be deployed on election day.
Okay.
Yeah, the other map have been deployed already, and that one is a real-time situation report that is geolocated. And for us, we want to respond to issues that would mar the election. For us, we're not keen about the results. INEC would declare a winner. But for us, it's the process that hampers on the integrity of the outcome. So we're looking, and 2 things are guiding us: the Electoral Act 2022, and also the INEC guideline for elections.
So what should we expect on this one? What is this going to do?
This is our electoral intelligence platform. So this would give us real-time intelligence on election day, both in the morning and in the afternoon. And it will give us specifically what is happening in real time in every polling booth across the country.
So how do they use this? Is it for the public to use?
Yes.
Or what?
Yes, this would be on our landing page on Connected Development on Election Day. And yes, it will be for general public to use. And we're also collaborating with newsrooms who are going to fact check most of this data before it comes to the front end. And we're hopeful that security agencies, which we're already in conversation with, would use this, INEC and also media houses.
Okay, I'm also looking at it, and I'm saying that, from the mock elections which you witnessed, it seems that you also had a report of some sort. I'm looking at what you noted in terms of, and that's the very last page of your assessment now, what you noted in terms of observed beavers challenges. You're talking about tension, intimidation, shooting, kidnapping. These are some of the the indexes which you use to monitor, is it the success? I'm looking at the very last page, just in case my producer is wondering. The very last page is monitoring the election process. And I'm wondering, how are you able to mention factors like tension?
Oh, because we talk to people. mind you, we have a network of over 35,000 people, and we have what you might call cells in most of this local government and even at the ward level, where conversation and focus group discussions are happening. And we've seen, we've seen non-state actors, have already deployed mechanism. In some cases, you wake up in the morning and all you hear is gunshots. These are building up of tension and, and putting in fear. What leads to voter apathy? Is that fear that politicians are putting in the minds of people? We even remember the case of Borno, where just a few hours to the election, a bomb goes off. There are strategic plans by people who try to scupple our democracy. So that's how they try to put fear in people and create that tension.
These beavers challenges that you highlight, I know that INEC, after the Osun Tribunal and then they said they're making changes. They're improving with every election. Will these challenges still subsist?
Well, mind you, Ekiti and Osho election is just pockets of election. This is a general elections. And, we're hopeful that we'll at least get 60 to 70% turnout. Imagine if we get 70% turnout. Now, the turnaround time from accreditation to voting is 2 to 3 minutes per person. Our election starts by 8:30 and closes by 2:30.
Yeah.
In Kenya, and from our experience, Kenya's register is 21 million. They start voting from 6:30 to 5 o'clock. And we have a register of over 90 million. And imagine if we get 60, let's even say we get 60% of turnout. INEC have argued that, they would still accredit and allow the last person on the queue after 2:30 to cast their ballot. But the time is not enough. And this is a technology platform. You have to deal with battery. We know there's also power issue in the country. So for us, yes, when we observed the mock, there was that improvement. But the percentage of turnout during the mock, a lot of people didn't even know a mock election was ongoing. We only had, less than even 10% of the register during the mock election. So we're still worried that if you have that number of turnout and then INEC is not able to deliver, this would not only impact the 2023 general election, but as we also go into 2027.
But, I mean, definitely these are things to look out for. Mr. Adekoya, I'm also looking at some of the things that you have put forward for us now. Well, it looks like we're almost out of time, but I'm a little concerned about your projected outcome vis-a-vis the poll that came out, the NOI polls that came out yesterday, putting Peter Obi ahead of all the other contenders. I don't know whether do you see it as a problem, or do you see it as something that it could be good for our democracy?
It has two faces to it. What INEC will count at the end of the day is not the poll. It's those who come out to vote. Yeah. And if we go by our history of poor voter turnout, and if people repeat that in this election because of the unreasonableness of some party supporters and their expectation, this is one election where the three leading candidates are expecting a landslide. Their supporters are expecting a landslide. The propensity
are they being reasonable?
Those are politicians for you. The propensity of any one of the three easily conceding defeat is very low. The Peace Committee is raising an alarm in terms of this posture and the rhetoric from party supporters. Before now, the issues were politicians generated. Now, the other issue is that party supporters themselves are quite unreasonable. So, and at that level, so I think the Peace Committee, everybody has to come together to douse some of this tension, manage the expectation of their supporters, and make certain statements like the then President Goodluck Jonathan did when he said, my aspiration is not what the life of any Nigerian. So until we see that, some concerns.
All right, then Onyekachi Adekoya is a security consultant and CEO PR24 Risk Management Consulting, as well as Hamzat Lawal, Chief Executive Officer, Connected Development Co. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having us.